Just changing the language and the way that you speak to yourself will have a huge impact on your confidence as a creator and as a person. So making sure that you interrupt those negative self-talk feedback loops is important. Welcome back to On the Horizon. This is Melrose Michaels. I am your host, and I'm here to share what's worked for me in building my adult creator business to try to make building yours just a little bit easier. Let's get into today's episode. Have you ever felt like you were just winging it and everyone else had it all figured out? Well, you might be experiencing what a lot of us call imposter syndrome, and I kind of want to break that down today. Imposter syndrome is super common in the adult industry, but you're not alone. You have to recognize how many successful adult content creators have experienced self-doubt. You have to embrace your unique talents and remember that you deserve to be here. Overcoming imposter syndrome starts with self-reflection. Identify your strengths, accomplishments, and the value that you bring to the industry and your fans. You're going to celebrate your achievements, no matter how small they may seem. I personally love tweeting mine at SWERS, sex workers abbreviated, posting W's, at SWERSPOSTINGWS. That Twitter account is dedicated to just sharing your successes publicly, screaming them into the void. Because like with anything, I'm sure you listening know this, it almost feels bad to talk about our wins. It feels like we're bragging or like we're putting ourselves on a pedestal. But the reality is you should be able to celebrate yourself. You work hard and it took a lot to get where you are today. What also helps is surrounding yourself with a supportive community, whether that be connecting with other adult content creators who understand your journey or your inner circle of family and friends from your real life. The ability to share your experiences with others, seek advice, and be uplifted is so important. And together, you're going to find that you share experiences with other adult creators or your inner support circle, and you're going to take comfort and have a mutual feeling of belonging. Another thing you should do if you're feeling this, overwhelming sensation of imposter syndrome is take a moment to challenge negative self-talk and limiting beliefs. One of the most important tactical things you can do in terms of self-talk is learn to interrupt it. Learn to interrupt your negative self-talk, and then once you've learned to interrupt it and you've identified it and gotten better at picking up on it in real time, you're going to notice that you now have the ability to change it. But first, you have to learn to catch it first. Thoughts can be really fleeting. So unless you make it a habit to interrupt negative self-talk when it happens, it will be very difficult to change those closed negative feedback loops otherwise. So when I hear myself having negative self-talk moments, one of the big ones that I have very, very often is when I go to film new content and I hit the record button and I get, 10, 15 seconds in, I'm talking, I'm moving, I'm, changing my body to have different angles towards the camera. And immediately I'm just like, I hate this. This looks like shit. Boom. Negative self-talk activated. And instead I'll say now, because I've caught on to this loop and this, negative feedback loop that I have playing in my own head, instead, I'll say, all right, warm up over. Now we're going to do it for real. Just changing the language and the way that you speak to yourself will have a huge impact on your confidence as a creator and as a person. So making sure that you interrupt those negative self-talk feedback loops is important. Eventually, you'll be able to turn them into positive self-talk feedback loops. The next part of this is limiting beliefs. You can replace self-doubt with positive affirmation. And I'm not saying stand in the mirror and tell yourself you're awesome because, while there is data to support that affirmations work, you actually have to believe them for that to take place. And for a lot of us, saying you're beautiful or you're perfect or your content's amazing or you're going to make $1 million this year, a lot of those things to us in our minds and in our core, in our souls, they feel very far-fetched. They feel very unattainable. And when you start with something that unattainable or that far-fetched, it makes it very hard for you to believe deeply. And affirmations only work when you believe them deeply. So Instead, start with things that are very attainable. Use affirmations in a way that is like baby steps towards the big goal. So maybe instead of saying, I'm a millionaire in the mirror when, maybe you're only making $100,000 a year right now, start with baby steps towards that bigger goal that are actually attainable and believable. So maybe you're saying, I'm going to make $200,000 this year, or I'm going to double my revenue this year. I'm going to double my income this year. Or even start smaller. I'm going to earn an extra $2,000 this month. Maybe that's really attainable for you. Maybe that's super believable. And then that, as an affirmation, can start to manifest. If you're enjoying this podcast episode so far, please take one moment to share it with another one of your adult content creator friends, because you know what the rule is here. We do not gatekeep, and we want to make as many adult creators' businesses as easy as possible. And you sharing this episode with them might do exactly that. Thanks so much in advance. Another thing that's important to fighting imposter syndrome is reminding yourself of your skills, expertise, and the impact that you have on your audience. These things are going to remind you and surround you in this mental state that lets you know you are capable and deserving of success. When I hear that negative voice in my own head, I refer to it as my scared self, and she wants the worst for me. She self-sabotages, she distracts me, and she's fucking mean. And when I think thoughts that align with that, I label them your scared self is talking, and that separates her from me and my identity. Another thing that you might want to consider is seeking professional support if that's needed. You can consider working with a therapist or a coach who specializes in imposter syndrome. They can provide guidance and tools that might help you navigate and overcome self-doubt. Ultimately, the biggest thing that has helped me cope with my own imposter syndrome is by having evidence that tells me otherwise. So when I'm telling myself I am lazy and I have this negative self-talk going on and I'm saying that I'm going to fail because I'm lazy, or I'm telling myself that all of these beautiful, comments and tweets on SWCEO, they're not real because I'm an imposter, because I haven't done 2 of those things on my to-do list today because I'm lazy. These things start to spiral, as you can tell. So one of the things that I look to is the evidence to the contrary. So while I also, like anyone else, have lazy days, I also am a super productive person for the most part. And I have a huge body of work that supports how productive I am. So while maybe I didn't get to those 2 things on my task list or to-do list today, I can look at the week and zoom out of my calendar and see all of the things that I've accomplished so far this week. So even if those 2 fell through the cracks, look how productive I was. There's evidence to support that I am not just lazy, that I am not an imposter. Things like that, and having those pieces of evidence to contradict and fight and fend off your negative self-talk have been game-changing for me. So the next time you're hearing that negative voice inside your head and you're feeling like an imposter, look for the proof in your life that undeniably tells you you're not. And then the last piece of this that I want to touch on before I wrap up this episode is the fact that you literally cannot be an imposter of yourself. There is only one of us in every capacity, and we all have these beautiful gifts and skills and different things about us that make us unique. The reality is that you cannot be an imposter of yourself, and no one else can be you, and that's our superpower. So the next time you feel like an imposter, remind yourself that no one else can be you, so that just isn't true. Embrace continuous learning and growth along your journey, because things like overcoming imposter syndrome can really set you back. There is so much human potential that gets trapped behind fear, and a lot of that fear is imposter syndrome. I hope that this helps in the same way that some of these skills and coping strategies have helped me deal with imposter syndrome. Thank you for tuning into this episode, and I'll see you on the next one, CEO Squad. It would be absolutely incredible if you rated this podcast 5 stars and left a little review. We want to get this podcast to as many adult creators as possible, and you taking a second to leave a couple stars and a review really helps us do that. Thanks so much.